Welcome, everyone, to Life on Film. It's a presentation of the National March for Life, and I'm Debbie Duval, and I'm part of the committee for the National March for Life. And today we have McElhinney and Phelim McAleer with us, and they are the producers of the film Gosnell, America's Biggest Serial Killer. Now, I say it's so great to speak to you again because you were at our main event 2 years ago, I believe. You were the main event at our Rose Dinner and on the Hill, and that was a real thrill. And I also say I'm just speaking to you because I do follow both of you on the Ann and Film Scoop and the Daily Virus, and I try to catch you when you're on the other podcasts because I just find you all very interesting. And well, I'm a big fan, and I'm also a big fan.
Thank you.
I'm also a big fan of truth, and I just think you guys seem to have an awesome ability to uncover things that are hidden and to bring out the truth. And certainly the great example is with Gosnell. With the quality of actors, it looks like a huge Hollywood production. It's really fabulous, and it's so well made. I think that our viewers may think it is a Hollywood production and might not be truthful. So I'm just wondering, before we get to the trailer, if you could just tell us why this is the truth, like why your film is the truth.
Well, actually, because a lot of it is based on verbatim court testimony. I say the courtrooms in North America are one of the last few places where truth is present in discourse now. I mean, there's so much sloganeering out there and so much false narratives out there. But in a courtroom, you're not allowed to throw slogans around very much. You have to, if you say something, you have to produce evidence to back it up, or the judge will exclude it. So because we hive so close to the courtroom, then this is why it's the truth. And you know why it's the truth? Because the mainstream media tried to cover it up. That's a big that's right. a big sign of
that's like a flag. That's like flagging up that there's something obviously of interest here.
Yes.
The fact that there was so little interest by the mainstream media in a case where a man is on trial for the multiple murder of children, and suddenly the whole of America is completely incurious. The journalistic elite are completely incurious. That made us very interested.
Yeah. Okay, so let's take a look at the trailer right now of Gosnell, America's Biggest Serial Killer, and then we'll just get a few comments afterwards.
All right, listen up. We are looking for anything that looks like drugs or paraphernalia.
Philadelphia Police Department, we have a search warrant. What is that smell?
I mean, you gotta see this. Is this normal?
I don't know. I've never been in an abortion clinic before. You are not gonna believe what I saw last night.
How many?
So far, we found over 30 of them. Healthy woman goes into a clinic, comes out dead, and there's no police report?
Files have been moved recently.
Look at this.
You'll be the prosecutor who went after reproductive rights, and you'll be a racist to boot.
You've got a lot of folk who'd like to see abortion outlawed. And this is not going to be the case that gives them an excuse.
Prosecution has offered you a plea bargain, Dr. Gosnell.
Then I would have to admit I was guilty. I'm not guilty.
When you get to the courthouse, you are going to be swarmed by reporters.
You ready for this, counselor? Where's everybody?
When was the last time your division inspected Dr. Gosnell's clinic?
We had instructions directly from Governor Ridge's office not to inspect.
Wouldn't testify in that case about anything. You doubt you'll find a doctor who will.
And you look at the facts, you will see what I see.
An overly zealous Catholic investigator.
Is that what you want to make this about?
There's nothing that man did that protects women or children, and you don't have to be a pro-life activist to see that.
Kermit Gosnell is perhaps the most prolific serial killer in American history.
You better win.
Well, I really think that the trailer sets up the movie. It really shows the quality of the production and great actors and just the gravity of the situation.
Yeah. I mean, one thing we did want to do is make sure that we had good actors in this film. I mean, a lot of, let's say, Christian or conservative movies are that sometimes, because they're low budget, and because it's the kiss of death for your career to be in them, sometimes the acting can let you down a little bit.
But I think what our intention was that the film would look like every other film, because we certainly wanted it to be something that people might come across by accident, when they're watching something on, streaming or whatever, that they might see it in someone's home or whatever. And certainly that's been our experience, that people don't watch it and think, oh, I'm not going to be interested in this. They think they'll be interested because of the crime element. And then they find out they get a whole education on abortion that they never asked for, but that they won't unlearn ever.
For sure. Yeah, that's for sure. So now let's just take a look at this first clip, and it's the gal from the Department of Health testifying. I found it shocking, the special treatment that abortuaries get. And wow, you must have found it shocking too when you read the transcript. So let's just play this quick clip, and then I really want to hear what you thought too.
You are an inspector for the Department of Health, correct?
Correct.
When was the last time your division inspected Dr. Gosnell's clinic?
1993. And then when the FBI raided the place.
17 years between inspections.
We were told not to do any inspections unless we received complaints.
And you received no complaints about Gosnell? Can you tell me what these are? I'll tell you what they are. They're complaints. Why didn't you do an inspection?
We had instructions directly from Governor Ridge's office not to inspect abortion clinics.
Why?
It would hamper women from exercising their reproductive rights.
Are you aware that a woman, Karnamaya Monger, died of complications from an abortion at Gosnell's clinic?
I believe so, yes.
Is it true the DOH requires nail salons to be inspected at least once a year?
Yes.
If someone had died in a nail salon, would you have inspected it then?
Look, accidents happen during medical procedures. People die.
So this is verbatim from what happened at the grand jury. So you had this woman who worked for the Department of Health being asked, when was the last time someone inspected the clinic? And this is something, this is absolutely true. This absolutely happened. I mean, we know this from the assistant district attorneys, Christine Wexler and Joanne Pescatore, who were there for that part of the investigation. This woman came in, was asked, when did you last inspect? And the answer was 17 years ago. And it is so shocking. And this is, of course, and your audience probably know a lot about this story. This is in the context of two women having died there. Karnamaya Monger, who died, a young Bhutanese refugee, and Samika Shaw, a young African-American mother. Two populations, by the way, that most progressives say they care deeply about. Those two women died at that clinic, died because of their injuries that they received at that clinic. And no one bothered from the Department of Health in Harrisburg could be bothered to go and inspect the clinic.
It's not even be bothered. They were legally obliged to go and inspect, put their feet in that clinic every year, walk into the clinic and do a visual inspection. But they suspended those visits. And by the way, not because a radical progressive was elected governor of Pennsylvania. It was because a Republican was elected.
And it's much worse than a Republican. A Catholic was elected.
Yes.
A Catholic.
Republican.
Tom Ridge became the governor of Pennsylvania.
And he was, he was elected as a pro-choice, moderate Republican. And there was lots of Democrats before, and they said, no, you still have to follow the law. He said, we're ignoring the law. No one's going to inspect abortion clinics. And that's how Gosnell was allowed to keep killing.
Wow. It's just incredible. It's an incredible story. So
I just wanted to say one other thing. That evidence that lady gave, that's in the grand jury report as well, right? It's actually there written. This is what they said. It's not just, we interviewed people or that. It's actually there. The prosecution have said it in black and white, and no one has challenged it.
Wow.
And the line about the nail salons, That is, I think, the second or third paragraph of the grand jury report, where they actually said nail salons get more scrutiny than abortion clinics in Pennsylvania. So, it's all basically verbatim.
Yeah, incredible and sad.
And sad.
So what I remember speaking to you when you were here for the National March for Life, and when we screened the movie, I used this as a little catch for those people. In this next clip, we're going to see the contrast really between Gosnell's sloppy manner, filthy kind of abortion clinic, and then this pristine, immaculate doctor from a more upscale clinic or facility. And unfortunately, though, they're exactly the same when it comes down to the killing of the unborn baby. So it was quite the contrast. But after we see it, I also want you to, we don't get to see the part that you're telling us about, but there's one place right around this where you actually strayed from the truth. So maybe you can just tell them that story. Yeah. So I'll just show you this clip. It's great.
So when you inject the fetus, do you put the needle here?
No.
Here?
Yes.
Right there. And that stops the heart.
That's correct.
And then you use forceps. You use these and you reach up in there and you grab a hold of an arm or a leg or whatever and you pull on it until it comes out or comes off. Correct?
That's correct. But with larger fetuses, they remain intact.
Of course, because the head's bigger. Makes it more difficult. What do you do then?
We use a machine to suction out the gray matter.
The gray matter, the brains. So you suction out the brains, and then what happens?
Then the skull collapses and the fetus can be removed.
Right. Now, isn't it true that sometimes in order to get the suction machine into the fetus, you have to use a pair of scissors to make a hole in the back of the neck?
Sometimes this happens, yes.
So before, when you said that you'd never cut the neck of a fetus...
I was referring to a live birth.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I get it now. Have you ever had a live birth during an abortion attempt, doctor?
No, I have not. Because we listen to the sonogram to ensure that the fetal heart has stopped.
Well, what if you made a mistake?
We don't.
Well, what if you did?
Objection. Hypothetical, Your Honor.
Your Honor, she's a medical expert. I'd like to have her opinion.
Overruled. I'm going to allow the question, but stay on point, counselor.
What would you do if the baby was out and it was breathing?
We would issue comfort care.
Comfort care. Can you define that for us?
That's keeping the fetus warm and comfortable. Eventually, it will pass.
Eventually, it would pass. So basically, you'd let it die. Seems like it'd be more humane to just take a pair of scissors.
Objection!
Yes, yeah.
So this is actually the whole reason why we made the movie.
Yeah, so this is basically verbatim from the trial transcript. But as you say, we changed one detail. So the actual abortion doctor said that they had done 40,000 abortions, not 30,000. But we felt people won't believe it when we say 40,000. So we just didn't want to distract people by calculating. So we left it at 30. But interestingly, it was the only time in the whole trial that this jury had seen, and we don't show them in the film. We want to reassure people the film is actually PG-13. It's not. There's nothing gory there. But the jury were seeing these terrible, terrible pictures of Gosnell's victims. You can imagine what that was like. They never reacted once. The only time they audibly gasped in the whole courtroom was when the doctor said, I was asked, how many abortions have you done? And he said 40,000. So we felt that was important because, in fact, and if you listen to Comfort Care, that's what Ralph Northam was talking about, the governor of Virginia, when he misspoke. He didn't misspeak. He described standard medical procedure. And if you look at his interview at the time, he was very calm, very cool, very collected. because it happens 100 times a day in America, I would bet.
Heartbreaking for sure. Absolutely. So I was just wondering if you could just tell me a little bit about the color charts, for these non-medically trained, looks like children, young people that are administering to these women who are putting their lives in their hands. So if you could just say a little bit about that, and then we'll play the clip.
Yeah, it was incredible. Obviously, Gosnell employed, people who, they weren't not just nurses. They weren't even, it wasn't even that. It was worse than that. Most of them had about a 9th grade education. Most of them had drug or alcohol problems, abuse problems. These were people. According to the Detective Jim Wood, these are people that you wouldn't have allowed to mow your lawn, let alone administer anesthesia. But interestingly enough, the daughter of one of the workers at the clinic, and that's the one that's going to be featured in this next clip, she created this cheat chart for herself. And again, if people look online at the grand jury summary document, they'll see that is reproduced. And so we reproduced that in the movie to show that. So she created this cheat sheet for herself to help her work out how much anesthesia to give each of the patients. And it's interesting that Christine Wexler, the assistant district attorney, said, in fact, that young woman who was a mere teenager at the time, that if it wasn't for her care, more people would have died, and nobody died under her watch, which is incredible. I have a friend who's an anesthesiologist, and he's retired recently, and he was so happy to retire because of the dreadful strain of being an anesthesiologist, putting someone to sleep and hoping to God that what you've prescribed them is something that they'll wake up from. So can you imagine, in this clinic, you had a teenager who had about an hour and a half, according to herself, about an hour and a half of training, was put into this situation where she was putting these women to sleep all the time, and yet she didn't kill anyone. And as I said, as the ADA said, it was amazing that, thank God, she was there. But it's shocking. Again, it's another moment in the movie where people look and think, well, there's no way that happened. Yeah. It actually genuinely did happen. And in fact, if anything, the actress playing that role, maybe looks a little too old, really, for the girl that was involved. It's incredibly sad that this was a care that was going on in Pennsylvania, and that no one at the Department of Health in Pennsylvania could give a damn.
Well, it is incredible. So I'm just going to play that, and then we'll just come back and talk a little bit about it.
I made me a color chart to remember the different drugs and how much to give them. They would tell me a color and I know what to do.
So Gosnell trained you to give anesthesia? How much training did you get?
About 20 minutes.
When did you start working at the clinic?
About 5 years ago, I guess.
You were 15.
Mama worked there. She'd bring me in after school for extra credit, and Doc liked me, so he hired me.
And you would use this chart to help you know what drugs to give the women who came into the clinic?
Yeah, the Demerol and the Cytotec. That's the one that makes them precipitate.
Precipitate?
That's Doc's word for it when the babies come out.
When the babies come out? What would happen then, after the babies came out?
Doc or somebody snip it.
Snip it?
He would take scissors and cut the back of their necks. He taught everybody how to do it so that it could be done if he wasn't there. He did it to all of them, even the ones that wasn't moving.
Some of the babies were moving?
Betty, how many times did you see that happen? The baby's moving.
I don't know.
Got any plans for the next few years?
So yes, I found that girl so young to have so much in her hands. So
she was younger. She was younger than that. I mean, she got credits from her high school for doing work experience at the clinic. That's how young she started being, and she got 20 minutes training as an anesthesiologist. So
another thing that doesn't come up in that clip that I think is interesting, maybe for your audience to know, and another disturbing the thing that actually is covered in the book in more detail, is that student nurses from the local universities would go and do internships, like placements there. And one of the things that Christine Wexler, the assistant district attorney, said she wanted to slap them, because she would ask these young student nurses, why didn't you report this? Why didn't you report this? There was feces on the ground. Toilets were backed up with baby parts. And you didn't phone anyone. You didn't tell anyone. You never got in touch with the authorities. And the line that they gave, which is what made her want to slap them. What really annoyed her was this. She said, "I thought that's how things were done in an urban clinic." This is what she heard. So basically, it's what's that phrase?
Reverse racism.
But it's not reverse racism. It's the low
soft bigotry of low expectations.
Yeah, the soft bigotry of low expectations.
That's fine.
That's okay for
minorities. We would tolerate that ourselves. White people wouldn't, but for minorities, that's fine. And all these progressive people, so in favor of abortion, so in favor of all the progressive agenda, they have lower standards for their black friends and their black neighbors and their black community. It's really shocking racism.
It really is. I take a look at this next bit, and so here's the health department not stepping up, not doing their job, not showing up, and then we have the media. Like, where were they? They've just decided not to do their job at all. Like, where were they?
It's incredible. This is
let's watch.
We're going to watch the clip.
Yeah, I'll show the clip, and then we'll talk about it.
You need to be ready. Kermit Gosnell is perhaps the most prolific serial killer in American history. But he is also an abortion doctor, a major hot-button issue. That makes him big news.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this is going to be a long trial.
When you get to the courthouse, you are going to be swarmed by reporters, swamped by them. They are going to be shouting questions at you, snapping pictures, sticking microphones in your faces. The courtroom is going to be packed to overflowing. You won't be able to use the toilet without one of them sticking their heads out to ask you for an interview. So remember, take a breath, stay calm, say the case will be tried in court and decided by the jury, and that's all. And when we get there, I want you to head right into the courtroom. I'll stop and speak to the press. You ready for this, counselor? I'll be damned.
Where's everybody?
So one of the things I loved about this clip was that blogger. Okay,
Yeah.
Now there's a hero in this film, as far as I'm concerned. But anyway,
Yes.
let us.
Yeah, well, that blogger is actually an amalgam of two characters, Molly Hemingway and
J.D. Mullane.
J.D. Mullane.
So J.D. Mullane was the local journalist, the local Philadelphia journalist. He's the guy who famously took a photograph inside the court of the empty benches reserved for journalists, and could have actually ended himself up in jail for doing that, because actually he was in contempt of court. But he did the world a service by doing that, because that picture was tweeted out, and suddenly, it did engender, some guilt on the behalf of the media. But there was an intentional thing, and we do a whole chapter in the book about this. It was intentional on behalf of the New York Times and CNN and Washington Post. It was intentional for them to not turn up for this trial. They were making a decision. And some of them, the quotes are quite extraordinary, where they said that they wouldn't do anything. No matter, even though this was a terrible case and should have gotten highlighted, they weren't going to report on it because it might affect a woman's right to choose, as they like to euphemistically like to call it.
But so many, Molly Hemingway and JD, they were big. They would shame the media into eventually covering it.
And so we wanted to honor them in this movie by having that character, as you say, the heroic character, be made up of amalgam of their names. But there were other people too. And interestingly enough, it was very much the pro-life community, by the way, and pro-life bloggers, pro-life people out there on Facebook who were pushing out stuff from Molly Hemingway and stuff from J.D. Mullane and others that really made a huge difference, that did turn the tide and did eventually, as I said, guilt journalists into turning up eventually. And it's interesting, and some of your viewers will probably know this, that the day they turned up, and it's very weird, and you wonder about the powers of I don't know, very powers of darkness. It was the same day as the Boston bombing. And so as quick as they came, they left. But the journalists did turn up on the day of the Boston bombing. That was the first day that turned up at the trial in numbers. And we represent that in the movie. But it's it's very depressing, actually, to realize that you're living in a country where journalists won't tell the news. They won't tell you the news. Just tell the news. Just say what's going on. There is a man in court, right now, as it was in Philadelphia, being tried for murdering babies born alive, and he cut their necks with scissors over a 30-year period, and he was on trial for 5 of them, and then was knocked down to 3. And you think that's not newsworthy. You think it's not newsworthy that the Department of Health hadn't inspected the clinic in 17 years, that it's not newsworthy that there were cats walking through the place, that it's not newsworthy that the toilets, and according to the janitor, took the stand and was asked, well, what were you working at? And I had to unclog the toilets. I mean, this is what he said. Jimmy Johnson.
Yeah,
Jimmy Johnson, who in the trial, this is in the trial transcripts, and they said, what were the toilets blocked up with? What were they blocked up with? And he said, well, with arms and legs. Baby's arms and legs. He said that, and that's not newsworthy in America. The New York Times.
And also, there was racism there. Like Gosnell had nicer rooms for white women, worse rooms for black women. You had these people saying, "Well, that's what I expected in an urban environment." You had if you want to, racism is very current at the moment. This was a story that had all these elements, but they chose to ignore it because they didn't want to shine a negative light on abortion.
Wow. Yeah, it's incredible. When there is a true story with such appalling subject matter, it seems really odd to say, wow, what an excellent movie. But again, this was presented so well, and you're right, it is PG-13. I mean, I'm pretty sure you could have put some pretty horrific things but it was done, despite the horror of it all, it was riveting. And I own the movie, and I bought the book, and that was back when you couldn't even really get it here. I went through some kind of .com as opposed to CA. But now that everybody's probably hooked and riveted, how can they get the book and the movie?
You can get the book through Amazon. You can write to us at unreportedstoriesociety.com, and we'll send. You can buy copies of the movie through us, I think. Yeah, exactly.
And
we'll let you know where it's streaming. It's hard to get streaming at the moment. There's a Netflix are supposed to put it on. It's stuck in streaming limbo at the moment, but. We'll be sending. We can send you a DVD if you write to us
at unreportedstoriesociety.com. But it's interesting, and I would recommend people to show people the film who might be on the fence, let's say, on this issue, and just leave it without comment and say, look, this happened. And I think, as I said, it's an education that we got. This education, we didn't know this before we started this whole. This whole journalistic endeavor into what's going on in the abortion industry. And as you say, it all sounds horrific what Gosnell did, but the truth is that the good abortion doctor, the legal abortion doctor who took the stand in the middle of this trial, what she said was more shocking to the jury than almost everything they heard even about the murder, because they realized that what is legal here in the United States, and even to a greater extent in Canada, is it's beyond belief, and you watch things like, I just recently watched, there's a documentary that's being nominated for an Oscar. It's called My Octopus Teacher. I'd highly recommend it. It's lovely. It's beautiful, but it's about a man who's upset with life or whatever, he's depressed, and he starts diving, and he has a relationship with an octopus, and he loves the octopus like a pet. And the octopus starts to recognize him and everything, and then eventually the octopus dies. And you can't not watch it without feeling you're sorry about the loss of the octopus, and you have all these feelings for the octopus and the man and the relationship and how beautiful life is, and how you can have that sympathy for an octopus and couldn't have that sympathy for a child. It's beyond belief. And the only reason it isn't happening is because people don't know. That is my belief. People don't know what it is they're signing up for when they have abortions. They don't know what they're signing up for when they're pro-abortion in their voting patterns. They don't know what it is. And they should get an education, and this film does that. And that's the service that I think we've done with this film. And I think we're very proud of what we did, because people don't know, and people, when they do know, they change their mind.
Well, and you should be proud. You should be proud of all the things you're doing. And education is right, and you're helping in that. So I just want to thank you for joining us today and for sharing, some information about the production of the movie, because that's always really interesting to hear the details. And again, thank you for all the work you're doing, presenting the truth on so many controversial topics, and especially with the Gosnell movie, a very controversial topic. And it was just wonderful having you. So thank you very much. We really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And I just want to say thank you to all of our viewers who've turned in to see this great story from Anne and Phelim. And I will be putting all of the links, so you can get the movie or the books. We'll be putting all of the links below. So thank you very much, and we hope to see you tomorrow for our next film.